We're here at the 2026 Vancouver Retro Gaming Expo, and I've never been to one of these before, so I'm excited to go check it out. So let's go see what it's all about. Tickets were $30 a person, which I thought was a little bit on the steep side, but I've never been to one of these conventions before, so I figured, what the heck. As soon as I walked in, I was immediately greeted with the vendor area, which pretty much occupied the entire bottom floor. Now, there are 3 floors to this convention, and we'll check with the other ones a little bit later on in the video, but right away I was excited to take a look around and see if I could find any video games that were on my wish list. My wife came up with this really cool idea that I write out my video game wish list on this bingo card. I thought this was a really neat way to keep track of what I was searching for, as well as make sure that I stay on budget, because otherwise I'm liable to spend way too much money at something like this. There were games for pretty much every console you can imagine here, but I was focused primarily on finding 8-bit and 16-bit games. Lots of bins on the floor with loose accessories like this Nintendo Zapper and the Sega Master System controller, which was a little bit more than I was willing to pay, so I passed on that one. Genesis controller I don't really need, but I did find this cool NES Max controller, which I'd considered buying, but it was still a little bit too expensive for what I wanted to pay, and I don't really need one. Plus, they're notoriously terrible controllers. There was some really cool artwork, like these retro video game inspired embroidered pieces. There were a lot of boxed games and even sealed games, lots of rare games too that I came across. So they had stuff for everybody, no matter what your budget, if you're willing to spend a ton of money, or if you're looking for bargains like in this bin here. Lots of loose NES games, some boxed Genesis games, mostly common titles. Game Gear games, which I'm always looking to expand that collection. Some DS games, if that's your thing. Bunch of boxed NES games here, including some Tengen titles, which I was really tempted to buy, but they're not on my bingo card, so I passed. More Game Gear stuff catching my eye. I have no idea why I was even looking at this unit. I already have 3 Game Gears, 2 of which I need to repair still, but this one was priced really well for a working unit. This vendor had another one which needed repair, and it was only going for 40 bucks Canadian, which is pretty good considering how clean this unit was. And you could pick up a recap kit off of eBay for pretty cheap these days. I briefly considered getting it, but again, I already have too many of these at home, so I left this one alone as well.
I'll definitely consider that.
One vendor there was even exclusively selling imported consoles and games. Look at this, we got the Super Famicom here. Beautiful console, way better looking than the North American version, even though I am partial to the North American version because that's what I grew up with. Lots and lots of imported games to choose from. Got a Dreamcast here, which I was tempted to buy because it's one console that I don't have in my collection yet. A few more games and some Game Boy units that are out of my price range. And I always get a kick out of these little TV plug-and-play units. Miss Pac-Man is one I already have. Lots of good deals on Game Gear games, but they were mostly sports titles and of course Sonic 2. They weren't on the list, so I moved on. But just in case, just want to make sure there wasn't a desirable title hiding underneath any of these. And of course there wasn't. More boxed Genesis games. Boxed Super Nintendo and NES games. And more bargain bins on the floor. This one was full of SNES games, mostly sports titles, but I did find this one that's near and dear to my heart.
Just passed this game.
I was surprised how many boxed NES and SNES games there were at this convention. I don't usually collect NES games in the box, but I definitely was tempted to buy a few here and there. But again, they weren't on the list, so I had to pass. Look at that, Leisure Vision. When was the last time you saw that? They even had a boxed console there, a boxed ColecoVision rollerball. My N64 game collection is pretty bleak, so I was tempted to pick up a title, but again, not on the list. Not gonna buy it. Ah, the 32X. Another add-on that I don't have. There are very few 32X games here, but there was The Amazing Spider-Man for $1,000, if that's in your budget. More bargain bins. This one was full of NES games. These were all going for $5 a piece. And wouldn't you know it, there's the first title on my bingo card. A little more sifting through the same bin, and I found a second one. Mark those off on my card. Boxed Atari 2600 games. Look to be in really good shape. PlayStations and PlayStation games. Oh boy, were there ever a lot of PlayStation games. Look at this, a Donkey Kong Jr. Game & Watch for $100. The vendor area was quite packed when I was there. I didn't get there right at 11 a.m. when the doors opened, but I'm guessing peak time was probably between noon and 2 p.m. It eventually settled down a bit around 3 p.m. There were a lot of cool artists there who were showcasing their work and had a lot of neat pieces for sale. Everyone there was so cool and friendly to talk to. There was a very inclusive vibe and atmosphere there throughout the entire day. Again, more of these mini arcade machines. You know I love these. And look at that, another game on my list. Let's check that one off. Yeah, you could see at this point the crowd was starting to thin out a bit. Earlier in the day, it was almost impossible to get to the tables to see the games. Some more very unique artwork pieces here. I won't lie, I was very tempted to buy something from this booth, but the pieces that I wanted were a little bit out of my budget. Yeah, look at this. This would look so cool on the wall behind me during my live streams. Let's head up to the other floors and check out what's going on up there. Up to the top floor, where we had some local computer clubs who had some vintage computers on display. Look at that, an old Macintosh. Remember when they looked like that? Shout out to the Chilliwack Retro Computing Club for bringing some really neat old computers for us to look at. Some of these definitely bring back memories. Sonic CD running quite well on an old laptop here. And I just had to sit down and play a quick session of Quake 3 Arena. I used to play this game for hours and hours into the night, probably about 25 years ago. Gosh, where's the time gone?
Oh no.
Still just as fun as I remembered it.
Love that game. I miss that game so much.
And some more vintage computers here to look at in the next room. I love the old Radio Shack stuff. As soon as I see that script, I'm drawn right to it. The old Commodore 64. I remember playing on those in elementary school. This was an interesting looking piece that I'm not familiar with. It was running Duke Nukem 3D. A little bit hard to control with a mouse though for some reason. Apple II computer. Just amazing stuff. There were some panels and guest speakers throughout the day. I didn't check any of those out, but I'm sure they were pretty good. There was a small tournament room upstairs where you could sign up to test your gaming skills against other great players. The games varied throughout the day. Here it looks like they're playing some Mario Kart Double Dash and some Mortal Kombat 2 over on this side. Down on the middle floor, they had a bar where you can get some refreshments. Look at this, they had some Crash Bandicoot-inspired cocktails. And some more places to play some games. Vancouver was there. They specialize in broadcasting chiptune music. Go check them out. This whole room was set up for gaming free play, with many consoles to choose from. You can just pull up a chair and play till your heart's content. On the main stage, they had various performances throughout the day. There were some musical performances, some improv, and even a costume contest at one point. I didn't record any of that because I wasn't here for it, but I heard it was pretty good. A millipede cocktail cabinet? Are you kidding me? I found this little gem tucked away in a corner downstairs. I just had to play it. I had a pretty good time at the show. I was only able to check off 3 games on my bingo card, so I was a little bit disappointed with that. I was surprised to see that there were very few Sega CD games. And Sega Master System games, while there were a few here and there, they were pretty scarce. In hindsight, I wish I got to the show a little bit earlier because maybe I would have had a better chance of getting more of the games. I'm not a huge fan of crowds, so the packed vendor area was a little bit uncomfortable for me at times. But in the end, my wife and I still had a really good time there together. It was a nice outing, and it was cool for me to geek out over retro games. If you've never gone to a retro gaming convention before, I highly recommend it. There's something here for everybody, no matter what console generation you're into. The people here are friendly, the games are abundant, and it's a nice no-pressure atmosphere. I hope you enjoyed this look at the 2026 Vancouver Retro Gaming Expo. If you did, please leave a thumbs up on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more retro gaming awesomeness. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.